This is Algebra 2, Lesson 12.3, period. So the period of a function is how long it takes to complete one cycle or one revolution. Oh my goodness. So hopefully we recognize that sine and cosine functions, the plane sine and cosine functions each have a period of 360 degrees. And that is related to the circle, because the circle has 360 degrees. So we can use this fact to create more cycles within a specific period by modifying the formula. So we've been graphing our sine and our cosine functions, and we put a number in front for the amplitude. We put a number in the back for the vertical shift. In this lesson, we're going to be putting a number with the x to influence the period. So that b that we're putting in there represents the number of periods in 360. So if you wanted to actually calculate the period, you would do 360 divided by b. Let's put a box around that stuff. So the first example says identify the period. It is y equals sine of 2x. So the period in this case would just be 360 divided by 2. This graph specifically would take 180 degrees to complete one cycle. So if I was going to graph this, and normally I have 360 degrees here, this is my sine graph, would go up, and then come back down, and then go up again. This is one cycle. Go up, come back down, back up again. The graph of sine of 2x would hit a complete cycle at 180 degrees. So it would go up, and then come back down, and then go up again, and then go up, and then come back down, and then go up again. And it would repeat, but it's going to fit a full cycle in 180, 2 full cycles in 360. Letter B, cosine of x over 2. Cosine x over 2 means that my b is a half. So I am going to do 360 divided by a half, and I'm going to just go 0.5 to make that easier on if you're using a calculator, but that's going to be 720 degrees. So if I had my normal cosine graph, here is 360 degrees. The cosines that we've been looking at go down and then come back up again. Cosine of x over 2 would only finish the first half of this cycle by 360, and then it would need a whole nother 360 degrees to reach the top by 720. So only half of the cycle fits in 360. And the last one's giving me a graph, but I can still identify the period. The easiest way, I think, is to look in 360 degrees. How many bumps do you see? 1, 2, 3. That's going to tell me that the b in my equation is 3. So I can do 360 over 3 to get 120 degrees for each of those cycles. And if this is the start of my function, my first cycle ends here, and I don't have this numbered, but I know that this is 90 and this is 180. 120 seems like a pretty good number for right between 90 and 180, and a little closer to 90 than 180. Okay, let's try writing some equations. Now we're going to take into account the period But don't forget about the amplitude and the vertical shift. We're doing all that. So, first question, sine or cosine, right in the center. Do I see an S or a C? That to me looks like an S shape. And it was an S shape pointing upward, so I know that this is a sine. I'm leaving space for my amplitude, I'm leaving space for my period, and I need space for my vertical shift at the end. So amplitude we talked about first on last lesson is 1/2, max is 3, min is -3. 1/2, 3 minus -3 is 3. I almost wrote 6. 3 minus -3 is 6. Half of 6 is 3. Next, I'm going to look at the vertical shift. That was the max point minus the amplitude. That is 0. So I can write the +0 at the back, but remember +0 doesn't do anything for me, so I'm going to elect to leave it off. If you'd like it there, it really doesn't make the answer wrong. And then finally, B, we're just going to count. In 360 degrees, I see 2 bumps, B is 2. That is my completed equation. If you have a graphing calculator, you can check your work, but again, checking your work isn't really necessary, but I'm going to just try typing this in. So I have 3 sine 2x, 3 sine 2x, and whether we close it at the back or not isn't going to change our answer, but to me that looks pretty good. Let's try the next one, letter B, sine or cosine. At the center, I see a U shape. A U shape at the center tells me it is a negative cosine. So I'm going to write the negative, but I'm going to leave a space just in case I need to fill in a number for my amplitude. Cosine. I'm going to leave a space for my period, and then I have a space for my vertical shift. So amplitude is half of the max minus the min, half of 3 minus 1. Half of 2 is 1, so I can put in the 1, or I can just leave it off. Invisible 1 doesn't need to be there, so it's right with it and right without it. Next is my vertical shift, which is my maximum point minus my amplitude. I have a +2 at the back, and I'm going to check that. If I draw a line at 2, definitely cuts my graph right in half. And finally is the period. Again, we're just going to count how many bumps in 360. 1, 2, 3. My period is 3. Let's try graphing that to make sure it looks okay. So this is negative. I'm going to leave off the 1 because I don't really need it. Cosine 3x plus 2. And that looks beautiful. That's it for these notes. Good luck on the exercises, and let me know if you have any questions.